All right, you've made some croissants. Probably too many for one person, maybe too many for a couple people. You could share them, you could freeze them, but realistically, they have a few hours of perfect croissant eating before they become stale croissants. Now, one of the best ways to take stale croissants and bring them back to life and change them, metamorphosize into something else is twice baked croissants. You cut them in half on the horizontal, soak them with a simple syrup, coat them with a frangipane in the middle and on top, sandwich them together with some interesting toppings and bake them for a bit in the oven. And what you have is a beautiful new enhanced croissant that's unique and interesting. I'm gonna be doing a triple chocolate croissant, a chai croissant, and a matcha pistachio croissant. Let's make some simple syrups to start. First, we're gonna do our chai simple syrup. Into a medium saucepan, we're gonna add water and sugar, cut open a chai tea bag. Bulk chai works just as well, just use what's available. We're just gonna make an extraction so the fineness of this particle doesn't really matter. Heat up your saucepan till a boil, add your chai, kill the heat and let it sit for a few minutes, and then grab a container to drain this into. I'm just gonna use a coffee filter and pour it through. A cloth or anything that's fine enough works just as well. Just wanna maintain, not a ton of particles coming through. It wouldn't be a big deal if they did in any way, shape, or form, but coffee filters work great for this kind of stuff. Go ahead and set it aside. Next, simple syrup up to bat. We got some water and some sugar going into a saucepan on a medium heat, aiming for a temperature of about 170 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a temperature that green tea plays nicely with. We really don't want a bitter tea here. We just want a tea like you would want for drinking. So shooting for that temperature range is the goal. Using matcha in baked goods really adds this wonderful vegetal, earthy flavor that you really can't get from too many other sources, and a certain depth that is kind of hard to describe at the same time. Playing with pistachio in a recipe like this works great. All right, that's close enough. Here we go. Pour the matcha powder into your saucepan, grab a little whisk, and whisk away until mostly dissolved. There'll still be some little particles, but it's no big deal for something like this. And grab a vessel, pour it in, no need to strain this one, and set it aside with the other. The final of our simple syrups in the trifecta will be a chocolate simple syrup. We're using cocoa powder for the base in this one, so measure that out. Back to the saucepan we go. Water, add sugar, our old friends in simple syrup land. Toss that on a high heat and bring it to a boil. This recipe makes a syrup that's a little thicker than the others, but not to worry, the spongy nature of the croissant will do its work in soaking it up. Kill it from the heat, add it to the pan, and start whisking in what can only be described as a difficult substance to whisk. It's the kind of thing that makes you think of it being hydrophobic, it just doesn't want to mix with water, but eventually, with enough persistence, it will mix with water. Now we have our simple syrups all lined up and ready to go. Next step, making the frangipans. Chai frangipane's gonna be the first one we make, and this one we'll do by hand. So into a large bowl, we're gonna add some softened butter, cane sugar. One fun thing about mixing something like this by hand is really getting in there and getting your hands dirty. It almost harkens back to childhood for me, and just getting into some mud or getting your hands covered with Play-Doh. I mean, maybe it's just me. A little activity like this that's kind of a trip down memory lane is a fun thing to do. Just keep smushing it together back and forth as the sugar begins to dissolve and it becomes a more cohesive mass. You're not going to aerate this like you would with a whisk necessarily, or a machine, so we're just going to make it into a mound. Next, we're going to add a room temperature egg, start to whisk that in to make it homogenized. If the egg's cold, it can cause curdling. If that happens, adding a little bit of your almond meal will help bring it together. We're just whisking to get a little bit paler and a little bit smoother in this one. Sometimes when I'm whipping for a long time by hand, I think of those old recipes that may have called for beating until 3 to 4 servants are exhausted. My arm is exhausted, my left arm is almost useless, so I think it's done. Now we can start adding our dry ingredients. You know, frangipane is almost just like a cake batter type consistency. Almond meal is doing the heavy lifting on this with a little bit of flour to help stabilize and some salt to bring it to life. It'll be really flat without it. We're gonna add the chai tea from 3 tea bags in this one. Again, you could use bulk, it's totally fine. It just might be a little bit more grainy on the touch. This is, you know, like a powder that's in tea bags. Next, grab your spatula. We're gonna bring this into a cohesive mass. There's logic to actually tasting these kind of things. It's not just about indulgence. You can tell right away if you have the proper salt content, for instance. That'll make a huge difference in your finished bake. For our matcha pistachio frangipane, we're going to be using our food processor. Always a great tool for making things quickly. First, we're going to blitz up some pistachios to make a rough pistachio meal. This is just the same as the almonds in the other one, but a little bit more coarse. It's going to make a lovely pistachio flavor go throughout this. And like I was saying earlier, pistachio plays incredibly well with matcha. They're almost like one of those matches that if you haven't had it, like when you eat it, the matcha's first on the taste, and the pistachios in the background. Softened butter goes in with some flour, some salt, some sugar. We're gonna blitz this up with some matcha powder and another egg at room temperature. Making batter consistencies in a food processor is such an easy task because you're not really worried about overworking it because it's so fluid. Not to say that you should leave it for like 10 minutes, but you can totally do something else while this is going. I mean, you still want to come and scrape down the bowl. Like any other thing, there's going to be stuff that gets trapped on the edge. So just do that periodically until you have a nice flowing consistency that's smoothed out reasonably well. The all-in-one method. Yay for machines. Put it in, just let it do its thing, watch the volume increase, take it out, call it a day. Go ahead and spatula this out of your food processor bowl and set it aside with the other. These kind of multitasking recipes are really fun, just kind of like lining up your arsenal essentially, waiting for assembly that can all take place in the most efficient manner possible in the home kitchen. Finally, our chocolate frangipane. I'm going to be using our Honduras Wampa Syrupy chocolate for this. Got a great earthy flavor that works great in anything like a frangipane. Chop it up finely or just break it up into a saucepan or a bowl if you want to use a bain-marie. One of the many advantages of induction heat is the ability to put something on a super low. So, I mean, you can go ripping hot on these and they boil crazy fast, but you can also make a temperature that's so low that you can melt stuff like chocolate without splitting it. Just remove the chocolate from the heat once it starts to melt and set it aside for later. I thought it'd be fun to do this recipe in 3 different ways. Doing it by hand, something everyone can do as long as they have a bowl. The other one is a food processor, which has its own conveniences. And the last one is the stand mixer, which has a lot of control. We're gonna add almond meal, salt, sugar into the bowl of our stand mixer, along with our softened butter, room temperature egg mixture. This is again the all-in-one method, which is an awesome way to do something if you just want to bang it into the thing and go for it. Making something like a frangipane that you're using for a filling, you don't need super great aeration. It's not going to matter that much in the end. Unlike if you're using it in a tart, say. Add your melted chocolate, and with your paddle attachment, we're going to make this homogenized. Such a great word. I mean, it really is. Now set this aside with the others, and now we have our trifecta of frangipans, and we're ready to assemble our croissants. Now, having croissants that are a day old or a week old is totally fine with this. It doesn't matter because what's going to happen is the simple syrup is going to enliven and soak through these when they bake. Just cut them on the horizontal, trying to maintain as much structure as possible. I mean, it's in the nature of a croissant to flake out and fall apart, so don't get too worried about it. And in a pleasantly messy activity, we're gonna spoon on our matcha simple syrup along with our pistachio matcha frangipane. Just use something like an offset spatula or a butter knife to smooth out the middle before sandwiching them together, picking up any stray pieces of croissant that may have gone. This will act like a binder to hold everything together. Spatula a generous portion on top and smooth it out in the same way. These are meant to kind of sheet off and create a coating around the entire croissant. Next, sprinkle on some pistachios and set aside on a lined sheet pan. For our triple chocolate croissants, do the same thing by cutting the croissants in half on the horizontal. Again, trying to maintain any broken pieces. I mean, you can piece even little bits together and it will come out as a whole once it's set in the oven with the frangipane. Spoon on the beautifully glossy chocolate syrup. Next, portion out some of your chocolate frangipane, not worrying too much about the messiness of what you're creating. This is part of the fun of something like this. Getting the counter dirty. Looks kind of cool. It cleans up easy. Now add some frangipane to the top and smooth it out again with an offset spatula or a knife. For this one, we're going to add some cacao nibs, which are going to add a killer bitter flavor to the finished product. Go ahead and put that on your lined sheet pan with the others. And last but not least will be our chai croissants. This is one I used to do in my bakery back in the day. It's such a nice flavor. It's crazy good. Spoon on your simple syrup, then add your frangipane just in the same manner. While softly humming to yourself, I can hear that. Reconstructing any broken bits just like before that are able to go on, using that mortar like frangipane to bring it all together, then placing some almonds carefully on top, even though they will move quite a bit in the oven. With twice-baked croissants, the possibilities are really endless. It's just a matter of your imagination. While I was making the chai croissant, I thought, you know what, those look like poppy seeds, and immediately I thought, lemon poppy seed would be killer. I'm sure someone's done it, but man, it'd be fun to do. Into a preheated 350 degrees Fahrenheit oven, we're gonna add our twice-baked croissants. Just checking the middles to see that they're done. If it's batter-like consistency, it still needs to go a little bit longer. These take about 20 to 30 minutes, you know, depending on oven. I'm using a convection oven, so that always makes it a little hotter. Put them onto a lined sheet tray and coat them generously with some powdered sugar to create our trifecta of twice-baked croissant goodness. It's an awesome use for croissants and really elevates them to a whole new level. So worth doing. The matcha is really fun. The first flavor that comes through is matcha, then it's really followed by this nice steady sweetness and pistachio flavor in the background. Quite nice. Twice-baked croissants are like bringing a little slice of the bakery home with you. Even if you have to buy croissants and let them dry out a little bit, it's so worth it. Chai is one of those flavors I wish we saw more in baked goods. Really comes through nicely, just this delicate spice. This one also has like a lovely saltiness too that really elevates it. This is a killer thing to make for a family gathering or a breakfast that you want to share with others and really, really impress people, I promise. Nice. This one's like a chocolate chip cookie that has this great little bitter finish with the cacao nibs on top. I mean, all of them, when the frangipane runs off, you get this wonderful caramelized flavor. There's different textures and flavors of frangipane depending on where they were on the croissant. Very nice. Triple chocolate with our Honduras Wampu Syrupy. Very good. Such a killer flavor, and I'm sure someone's done it, but like anything,